Amazing guest hosts. We have some amazing guest hosts from Harvard Government Performance Lab who do this day in and day out and are going to share their best practices and their story. So, with that, I will pass it over to you, Emma.
Thanks so much, Marina. And hello, everyone. We are so pleased to be with you today, and it's wonderful to see some familiar faces. My name is Emma Craig, and I'm a project leader on the Children and Families team here at the Government Performance Lab. And I'm joining you today from Charleston, South Carolina. I'm also joined by two of my colleagues who also lead our team's work with jurisdictions to strengthen KinFirst practices. Linda and Shireen, could I get you to say a quick hello?
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. My name is Linda Blancato. I'm a Director of Child and Family Wellbeing Initiatives on our team based in Raleigh, North Carolina.
Hi, everyone. My name is Shireen Ashley. I am a fellow based in New Jersey, and I am sharing our slides.
Thank you, Shireen and Linda. We are also really excited to have guests with us from the ChildNet team in Broward County, Florida. And I'm going to give a shout out to Sharon, Stephanie, and Allison, who are going to be sharing with us a little later on today's call. Shireen, if we could skip forward to slide 4 to talk a little bit about the GPL before we get started. I wanted to share a little bit more with you all about who we are at the Government Performance Lab and our work around kinship care. So the GPL is an applied research organization based within Harvard's Kennedy School, and our team is spread out throughout the country. You probably already picked up on that based off of our locations. And we work with state and local government agencies to build more just and effective service systems for their communities. Our work is really hands-on and implementation focused. We really like to get into the weeds and work alongside agency staff to develop and test new approaches, supporting teams through key implementation decisions and milestones. My background before joining the GPL was in state and local government here in South Carolina. So I like to say that one of my favorite parts about my job is getting to support former me's in different places across the US. And so today, as we discuss strategies for asking youth about their kin, we'll be drawing from some of the tools and the strategies that we work with jurisdictions to implement in their own efforts to build KinFirst systems and cultures. So we're dropping a link right now into the chat to a page on our website that shares some more of these materials. You are all welcome to return to and use these in the future at any point. But let's go ahead and get started on today's strategy. If we go to the next slide, I would like to get us started by asking you to take a second, take a moment with me and think back to your middle school days. I know maybe not where you thought we were starting or headed, but gave some visual aid if that's going to help inspire you to think back to middle school. In that, can you mentally picture yourself in your school during a specific middle school memory? Maybe you're in your favorite teacher's classroom. Maybe you're at lunch with your middle school bestie. Maybe it's a not so great memory because, let's be honest, middle school can be rough. I know it was for me. But whatever memory you're recalling, place yourself back in your middle school shoes and then imagine if someone new entered that memory. Imagine if an adult stranger came up to you and was telling you something that happened, and because of it, you can't go back home to stay with your mom or dad for a while. Now, in one version of the story or memory, that stranger immediately follows up by telling you to come with them as they've got a place to stay or that you can stay or a family for you to stay with for a while. How are you feeling in that moment? Shocked, scared, upset, confused, probably all of the above. In another version of the story, imagine if the next thing that stranger says to you is instead something like, I know you must have a lot of questions right now and you don't know me yet, but I want to help you and I want to hear what you want to do. Since you can't go to your parents' home right now, is there somewhere else that you'd like to go? Or maybe someone you just want to talk to about it? Who can I call for you? So we like to do this exercise as a reminder that inviting you to share their perspectives from the very first interaction and throughout the placement process can really make a difference in how they experience this stressful and traumatic time. As asking youth who they would feel comfortable to stay with, or if there are other friends, family, and community connections that they want to stay in touch with, can promote mutual respect and offer youth a greater sense of control over what's happening. Even if these connections may not be able to serve as a placement option, if the child is naming them, these are important supportive relationships that can and should be maintained. And we know that some of the most important people who can care for youth or offer support might not be direct relatives, right? We see this being especially important for teenagers, notably our LGBTQ plus youth for whom fictive kin, like maybe a coach or best friend's parents, can offer even a great, or can often sometimes even the greatest support of sense of support and stability in these really tough times. And even 3, 4, 5-year-olds know when they feel comfortable and whom they feel the most connected to. In fact, they might be able to give you the most straightforward answer out there. We really believe that no one knows kin better than youth, yet they're not always asked, and they can end up being placed with different resource families or in group homes by default, even when they have placement options with adults that they already know and trust. So question is, why doesn't this always happen? Well, we also know that these can be really challenging or intimidating conversations to have, especially for new staff. And a natural response can sometimes be to shy away from conversations that give youth the chance to share their preferences and reflect their own perspectives into decisions that are being made. Or sometimes maybe this means trying once, but not creating as many opportunities to circle back and follow up with the child. So how do you empower your staff to keep having those kin-focused conversations with youth? One of the biggest components to ensuring this is a priority in your agency, as a priority in your agency, is supporting and equipping your frontline staff to have those conversations and making sure you're offering really clear checkpoints where they can share what's coming out of them. On the next slide, you'll see some strategies that we've worked with jurisdictions all over the country on. And we've seen some of these to be the really most impactful ways to prompt and support staff in engaging youth. First of all, prioritizing time to train staff on the importance of engaging with youth about their kin. And, in those trainings, making sure that we're naming and normalizing how and why this can be challenging and offering supports throughout the process. Really figuring out ways to create a safe space to practice these conversations and be able to reflect on what still feels challenging or intimidating about them. It also can be really great to introduce activities that staff can use with youth to learn more about their supportive adults, like a heart map, which I know we talked about more in depth on a previous call. A heart map can help engage youth in conversations to help identify any relationship that's a priority to a child, right? Mentors, family friends, teachers, family pets, all the important people in that child's life. And making sure that heartline or the heart design for the heart map is intentional, right? I know previously we talked about how this design with 2 lines was an intentional way to make sure that we were leading to more generative conversations about supportive connections. Some other activities that we've seen to be really helpful or fun ideas are things like drawing a family tree, eco maps, maybe talking through a family photo album, or asking youth about photos on their phone. And just like we're encouraging staff to keep following up with youth, we should also be following up with our staff on that process. Staff should be asking youth about their supportive connections at every placement change and just generally at regular intervals, places like monthly check-ins. Supervisors can encourage this practice by regularly asking staff, well, what did the youth say during their one-on-ones or case reviews, other meetings, other check-ins, using existing checkpoints and conversations with staff to check in and to see how it's going and back them up, offering a lending ear and being supportive around ideas or ways to troubleshoot together. It can also be really helpful to designate one official place for keeping a youth list of kin, be that in your case notes, within your IT system, so that connections aren't lost and everyone across the agency is referring to the same place. All right, on the next slide, we'll see some questions. This could feel kind of repetitive for folks at first, as we're talking about continuing to have these conversations to keep coming back. So we found it's really helpful to provide ideas and examples of ways to employ different conversation starters with youth and young children as appropriate. So this list on the slide is a starting point, really, but we are assuming, as we know that many of you in the room are experts on this or have done this yourself, we would love to hear your go-to questions when engaging a child about who they trust and feel connected to. So if you don't mind, would you take a second and write down in the chat and share with us? We're going to drop the question in the chat as well. What is a question that you use to engage youth about who they trust and who they feel connected to? And I'll give us just a second to think and give you folks this time to write. Yeah, and following this call, we'll obviously be sharing out these slides, but also hope to compile or add this list of question examples that you're sharing with us as a group. So really appreciate it. Seen some good. Who came to your birthday party? If you had a magic wand and could reach out to one person from the past that you miss, who would it be? Ooh, I love that. Family finding, exclamation point. Where and with who do you spend holidays with? If you had to call someone for help, who would that be? Who do you share good or bad news with? These are great. Yes, please keep them coming. We were on another call the other day and I heard someone share about not only do they ask some of these questions, but in this example, she said, sometimes I'll have a list of these questions we'll go through together and I'll encourage someone or the youth that I'm talking with, say, you only get to choose that person 2 times on this list. Who else? Who else? And like giving some ideas to them to, like maybe go beyond that first or second person and give me some other people as well. Let's really think about who's in your network here, which I thought was a really interesting strategy. All right, thank you all so much for contributing. Like I said, please keep on dropping them in the chat as we continue. Thank you for those examples. And now we're going to transition and hear some more examples from our guests from the ChildNet team in Broward County, Florida, about ways that they're training and supporting their staff to engage with youth. So the GPL worked with the ChildNet team in Broward County, Florida last year on a project focused on increasing and better supporting KIN placements. And from early on in our work together, it became pretty clear that one of the things staff found to be the most challenging about finding and making KIN placements was feeling comfortable and equipped to have what can be those really hard conversations with families about placement options, including direct conversations with youth. And so in our work together, we developed trainings for Broward County frontline staff to address what feels challenging about those conversations and give them a space to practice them together. And this included creative ways to engage with younger kids about existing relationships, also opportunities for teams to provide input in placement decisions. We kicked off the training about this time last year, which feels crazy to say now, Broward County team. And we kicked it off with current agency staff. Now it's a regular part of the ChildNet training for new staff as well. And we are lucky to have a few of those team members joining us on the call today to share about their work and provide you with a couple of resources that you can take back and use within your own jurisdictions. Sharon and Stephanie are joining us from the ChildNet training team, and Allison is joining us as a director of case management who participated in these trainings. And I'm going to kick things off by asking them a few questions. As they're sharing, you should feel free to drop any questions you have for them in the chat as well. And Sharon, I'm going to turn it to you first. Could you tell us a little bit about your role on the ChildNet training team and then paint a picture for us as to what these KIN trainings look like when you offer them to your staff? How do you invite them to attend, and then what happens once they do?
Yes, so my name is Sharon Fernandez. I am a career development counselor with ChildNet. We are in Broward County. And after our new trainees complete their testing and they finish pre-service training, we offer them workshops. And we do workshops for 4 weeks after they test. These workshops are open to all employees at ChildNet, and one of those workshops is the kinship training. So initially, we started off with the Zoom kinship training as we wanted the most employees to be able to participate, and it was successful. So normally with virtual trainings, you want to make sure that people are participating, and we did get great participation with those trainings. We then decided, because we had 92% of our frontline workers were trained in it, that we were going to move it over to our now new trainees that came in. And so I do what's called a unified home study training. It's in a program that we use where we do home studies. And so that training provides trainings for how to create a home study for relatives and non-relatives. We do that in person, and we decided to tag along kinship with it so that we could discuss kinship training. Okay, now we've discussed the training. How do we go about completing this home study for the family? So they kind of tie in together. So we did one in person, and we're going to start our second in person in 2 weeks. And so our first in person was great. We have a lot of feedback from individuals, and so far everyone that has participated has told me that they enjoyed the training.
That's great. And I know that, this training is covering a lot in a little time. And I know that you're within that training thinking particularly one piece of that is supporting your team and feeling prepared for those conversations. I'm curious, with folks knowing that as they're coming into the training, what are things that your staff share that they're most worried about or have questions about on the training portion that's focused on engaging with youth? And how do you make it feel like a safe space for everyone to feel comfortable practicing these conversations?
So yes, so one of the things that staff are worried about is children that are in fear of discussing their information with individuals. They want to keep their information confidential. Most of our youth have told some of their friends what's going on, but it's based off of their narrative, and they really don't want us discussing the case with them. And so I think that one of the things we do is provide one of the handouts we provide is the guide to non-relative and relatives to finding and engaging families. And that kind of assists them with questions that the youth might have and how to respond to those questions, which I think is really great. Making sure that we're having these conversations when we do our one-on-one, when we sit down, we speak with them one-on-one, making sure it's a private place that we're speaking with them. Also making sure that their voice is being heard. That's one of the things we want to know, that they're included with it. It's part of their decision also. This is just not our decision. We're going to be a team, and we're going to create some ways to make them more comfortable in the situation that they're in.
Yeah, that's really great. And spoiler alert, we are going to share a link to that engagement guide that Sharon just referenced. That's really great that you're able to offer that in pairing and support. And I'm curious, since you mentioned that you've done both, right? You've done virtual trainings and you've done in-person trainings. Both of these trainings involve a portion in which you're doing some role playing and modeling conversations. It's interactive. I'm curious, do you have any trade-offs, or have you seen, any pros and cons? I'm just thinking for folks who are considering creating something similar in their own jurisdiction and thinking about, do we do this virtually so that more can come? Do we do this in person? Any tips or tricks that you'd share with folks as you've done both?
I didn't see any cons with it. I think that with the Zoom, you're able to get more people attending versus the in-person. As we are hybrid, we do some of our supervisors have their staff coming in 3 days out of the week, and so you're able to get more people to attend with the Zoom. And I have to say that the participation was so great when we did it virtually. So it wasn't like we saw a lack of people participating where we felt like, okay, we need to have this in person. So I really don't think that, I think as long as you're monitoring and making sure people are participating in the trainings, then, Zoom is great to go. It's just that we happen to have our uniform home study training. It's in person, and so we just kind of tag along and do the in person for the kinship.
I gotcha. No, and I can say last year when we were working together and prepping for these trainings, we did kick them off virtually. And I had met a lot of your folks, some in person, some virtually, but not everyone. And we were like, how is this going to go? We're asking a lot of our folks in terms of interactivity, and it was amazing. They were so interactive, so responsive, had lots of reactions and ideas, and just really good conversation throughout. So just wanted to say, but we also were definitely like, oh, we could definitely see how in a smaller closed room setting, especially if we're thinking about how are we setting up a safe space for folks to feel comfortable sharing what they're nervous about or practice again, then getting to do that with a smaller group in person would be wonderful as well. Thank you, Sharon, for sharing both of those experiences. Folks, feel free to drop any questions that you have. I'm going to transition to a couple questions for our team member, Allison, as well. And I think that, let's see, Allison, I'm trying to make eye contact with you. There you are. Hello.
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 Good to see you.
Great to see you too. I want to ask you a couple questions to think or to hear about how you and your leadership team thinks about supporting their case management staff and having these tough conversations. You know, like we talked about earlier, making time for the staff to have their training is, of course, so important. But what comes after is also just as important. And as a manager of a team, how do you think about reinforcing trainings with your staff?
Right. So good question, because we all sit at training, right? But the real work comes after. So I think in terms of difficult conversations, we definitely can't shy away from these. We have to acknowledge that these are difficult, and then it might be a sensitive topic, and ensure that there's open and ongoing communication with staff. I think that we have to address every situation as soon as possible. And we also have to be sensitive, right? Because staff may have their own bias and personal opinions about things. And it's important to normalize these feelings. I think it's important to normalize the tough conversations, because with them comes growth, right? So it's important to encourage them to express how they're feeling, and always express your concern and actively listen. And I think the most important thing about tough conversations for me is mutual respect. I let my staff know that I come with zero judgment, and that it's a difficult process. And my intention is always to support them. And I think that's a vital piece of it. In terms of reinforcing trainings, I think it's a mix of individualized and group support. I think you need to talk about how the information provided in the training actually translates into real life situations. Talk about barriers that they're having, and apply the skills and knowledge in real life situations. Provide feedback and coaching, and then assist them with integrating the new knowledge into conversations with youth, and the difficult conversations that you mentioned. And that's my key, right? I always want to talk about it. I want to see how, as a group, others might have tools or skills that we don't have, right? And it's important to keep talking about it and keep having these conversations. Encourage staff in the decision-making process. And really reminding them what they do matters, right? These people are the experts. These are the ones that are going into the conversations, and really let them know that it's vital to our success. And within that, providing feedback and recognition, and always sharing successes. It's always important to talk about what we've done, and support each other.
Yeah, those are great reminders, Allison. And it's great to get to see you in action some with your team this past year.
Always a pleasure, Emma. It's always a pleasure.
Do you have any tips specifically thinking about, one of the other things that we reference as being really helpful and impactful is using your existing checkpoints, meetings or other conversations that you're already having with your staff to keep asking about engaging with youth, and make sure that you're keeping it a focus. Any tips there in terms of how you think about doing that to make it feel like not a super heavy lift, but still an important piece?
Yeah, I think in all your checkpoints, whether it's casual conversation, whether it's formal supervision, informal. I mean, at ChildNet, we are a kin-focused culture. That is one of our main goals, is to increase our kin placements, is to place children with kin. We know that these children have better outcomes, that these families have better outcomes. So I think just reminding them how important it is. And again, reminding staff that they are the most important piece. They are the ones on the front lines. They are the ones that are doing this. I think that's the most important part.
That's great. I think so too. Thank you, Allison. Yeah, and thank you both, Allison and Sharon. We'll have a little bit more time for a few questions here for them at the end. If anything comes up, again, feel free to put it in the chat. Really appreciate both of you all being willing to share pieces of your Kin First journey with us.
It is our pleasure.
Oh, well, it has been such a pleasure getting to work with you all as a team. And we wanted to share a few resources that Broward County's developed that you are welcome to take, use, and adapt in support of your own staff and for your own families. Linda dropped the link to Broward County's Guide to Engaging Relative and Non-Relative Caregivers that Sharon referenced. And this is a really rich resource that covers much more than what we're discussing today. Within that, we want to draw your attention to page 7, which provides some tips and suggested questions to use when engaging with a child to talk about kin or to talk about their community connections. And then we are also going to share a link with 2 scripts for model conversations from the ChildNet staff training that Sharon was describing earlier. So the link in the chat takes you to a Google Doc that gives model conversation. There are 2 scripts within. The first focuses on creating a safe space and creative ways to think about speaking with a young child about their connections. The second script focuses on engaging with teens. And these are the scripts that Sharon and the training team use in their training in Broward County. And in addition to sharing the scripts with you, 2 of our esteemed ChildNet guests, Sharon and Stephanie, also from the training team, are going to switch gears and put on their trainer hats for us today and model one of these conversations for us right now, so you can get a feel for how the training actually plays out. So as Stephanie and Sharon are modeling, they're going to be using the conversation with a young child. So if you open up the script, you can actually follow along. And this is actually, I should say, when we initially had these trainings last year, and part of the process in our breakout room sessions, we actually let staff or team members vote on the conversation options and what they wanted to practice or what they felt to be the most challenging. And this particular conversation around engaging with a young child, and then also, or was some of the most frequently voted conversation. And then also in terms of thinking about breakout room discussion, some of the most rich follow-up conversations around, as we prompted them with like, what came out of this that felt different, or what idea did you have as a result of this conversation? It sparked a lot of good conversation. So one of the reasons that we're highlighting this one. Okay, Sharon and Stephanie are about to switch into full trainer mode, so you can see what this looks like in person. And as part of that simulation, we are the trainees today. So appreciate your participation during the short simulated experience. Sharon and Stephanie, please take it away. I'm passing the mic to you.
I was waiting for you to say, and action.
Yes, and scene. Or wait, yes, action.
There you go. Hi, Leah. I'm Karen.
Hi, do you like unicorns?
I don't know much about them. Can you tell me a little bit more?
Well, they're magical horses and they have rainbows and horns. I love them. They're amazing.
They sound amazing. Do other people in your family like unicorns?
Mom says to stop bothering her with them. And Jaden says they're stupid, but they're not stupid.
You probably have some friends at school who like unicorns, right?
Yes, Penelope and Ava love them too. And we play unicorns at recess all the time. And one time, my friend Lindsay even had me over for a unicorn birthday party.
Wow, that sounds like lots of fun. How about Penelope, Eva, and Lindsay's families? Do they like unicorns?
Well, I don't really know about Penelope. Eva's mom played unicorns with us when I had a play date in the park, though. That was awesome. And Lindsay's little sister likes unicorns too.
Is Eva in your class at school?
Yes, and she is right next to me in line because of our last names.
Very cool. So your last name is Smith. So does Eva's last name start with the letter S too?
No, hers starts with a T. T for Taylor.
Okay, Taylor. So, okay.
Do you want to play unicorns with me?
That sounds like a lot of fun. Let me see. Do you think you and your unicorns could help me out with a project first, though?
What kind of project?
Well, I'm trying to make a list of everyone in your family, Leah, especially the people who you really like. I was thinking maybe you could help me by drawing a picture. I brought some paper and some markers. Maybe we could start with drawing you, and then who else should we add?
Mom, Jaden, and Grandma.
Nice. Tell me about your grandma. End scene.
End scene. Thank you all so much. Shout out to a round of applause, actually, to our esteemed actors at the ChildNet team. Thank you so much. They will, if you would like a signature later, email follow up. I'm sure they would be happy to provide it. Thank you all both. And I'm curious, in the spirit of us being trainees together today, if in watching that model conversation, if anyone wants to volunteer, even either in the chat or come off mute and share any strategies that you saw and whether they feel similar to things that you talk about as a team or anything that stood out to you that's different or a new idea. Yes, Gloria.
So I was gonna say it just felt very natural. Of course, the conversation, it wasn't like anything forced. She was using the unicorn as a way to basically introduce like who else likes unicorns and so forth. So it wasn't anything forced. It was just a very natural conversation.
Yes, I love that. You're totally right. And that kind of connects to, let's see, Cecilia, I see in the chat you said the way she followed the child's lead in the conversation was really great. And agree, I think that really contributes to it feeling natural, maneuvering. Actually, I was thinking back to this training, and someone's reflection was, never have I heard so many things about unicorns in one conversation that led to so many different places. But it's still feeling natural. Yes, what else?
I
Let's
think
see.
someone just put this in the chat, but how organic the conversation was pertaining to, hey, I see your last name is Smith. Does your, relative or whoever has the same last name? So it's asking the question without appearing invasive or being overpowering. You're coming down, it's almost like looking at the child at eye level, but in a conversation. So I really like that strategy.
Absolutely.
I
Thank
would
you.
say
Oh, sorry,
I'd
Jan.
like to add something to
Yeah.
my first tendency when I read that script is like, if it was me, I probably would have done so much more prodding and poking. But I like the strategy of she's just collecting names. You know what I mean? We will go back a little bit further and talk about Penelope and Grandma and dig later. We're just keeping that conversation going, keeping the child interested in what the unicorns, and again, use another opportunity later on down the line to really try and get some more specific information and details about these people.
Yeah, that's a great point, Stephanie. And also I see in the chat, and this all connects to, right, how someone's saying how in getting the friend's last name so naturally, then also leading into feeling out whether or not that child knew her friend's families, what is that relationship like? But it wasn't like a interrogation around like, well, what are the parents' names? What are we doing now? It was a very natural conversation where the child got to share comfortably. Anything else stand out to folks? Similarly, Jill, how you said that she explored the family without the child realizing what she was doing. Yeah. And then also in these scripts, intentionally, we didn't try to do it all, right? This is a snippet or a piece with some strategies, but also what I think can be really fruitful conversation with staff is this question around, well, what else can make this conversation more effective? What do you do in this setting, or what could you do? Is a way to open up additional conversation, and also naming. I think something, I don't know, Stephanie or Sharon, if you've heard more of this recently, but sometimes we also heard like, oh, this conversation went really well, but that's not always realistic, right? Like, it's not always going to follow the script. And so opening space for like, yes, you're right, this is one example of how this could go, but what else might happen? What else could you do here? So I'm curious if folks in the room have any thoughts about what else could be done in this setting to make a conversation like this really effective, or anything that you've seen in your practice. I'll give us a second to type or share.
I feel like I'm cheating because I kind of know the answer, but I wanted to share one thing. I now that we're doing it in person, keep in mind that our audience is brand new case managers. They've never done this before. And so I think when we were doing it in Zoom and we had everyone, the entire staff, you had a lot of experienced people, seasoned people. So our new DCMs don't really know how the conversation is going to go because they've never done it before. So anyone who's considering doing this training, I would definitely encourage you to have a nice mix of people, both new so they can learn from the more seasoned. And I think that would be really beneficial to encourage that conversation because our more experienced people will kind of know like, no, that's not how it's going to go. Let me tell you, here are the possible barriers and obstacles, and then we're able to tackle through them with that mixed audience.
That's great, Stephanie, and that's not cheating. We want all of the tips, tricks, and ideas. Anything else stand out to folks or any thoughts here around what else could happen in this conversation?
I just have one. I just think you let the child lead. That's the most important thing from what I've seen, Don't try to hammer in, like Stephanie said, right away. If the child leads off somewhere else, just kind of go with it. You can get information later, but once you don't want to say anything that could, you want the child to trust you. You want the child to lean into what you're talking about. So I just think that following the conversation of the youth and the child is really important.
Absolutely. That's a good one, Allison. I also see a message here in the chat about sometimes how having these conversations might not always be as productive. And another avenue is following up with foster parents to see what names have come up in those regular conversations. Yes, I think that's a great point. And actually something in this training we talked about is norming, with your foster resource families, like the fact that we are going to continue to be asking about and trying to find out more about those connections and continuing to build that network for the child. So that's a great point. So now that folks have seen this in action, I wanted to hold a final call or last call. If anyone has any questions for the ChildNet team about the actual administration of the training or any pieces or components that you're curious about, just wanted to hold another second here for if anyone has questions, either in the chat or if you want to come off mute to ask them about how they're actually doing this training, anything that you're thinking about, logistics or otherwise. I also, Sharon and Stephanie, wanted to give you one last call. If anything else that as we practice, ask folks question, any final tips and tricks or any things that you'd want to share before we wrap up.
I would say if you don't have a training team to do all the scripts together, like we're a team, so we're able to kind of do this for each other. But if you're a one-man show, then definitely the pre-recordings would be necessary. If your training team is on staff, it'd be awesome if you can do it live. Because again, technical difficulties, if you can avoid using that technology, it would be awesome to assist with the flow of everything.
That's a good one. And also, even I'm thinking when we did this last year, we did a mixture. So Allison was one of our esteemed actors, right? We had supervisors or managers model some of these conversations. And again, this was with existing staff, but I think in some ways it was fun and cathartic to see, their supervisors acting and then getting to provide feedback around, how they handled the conversation, other ideas that they had. So just sharing, that was a fun dynamic to be a part of as well.
It was. People are still talking about it. I don't know if it's for good reasons or... but people are still talking about it.
What a great job you did.
No, well, I don't know if it was a job for sure. It was a job for sure. But it was fun. And I think that's another important piece, like Sharon said, it's really fun to involve your whole team. I know for people that have been around forever, myself, Sharon, Steph, like 20 years, sometimes we can get like a little stale. So it's fun to like have those types of interactions and do those types of things together. It's very team building too. So we had a good time.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. Thanks to all three of you for your participation and being willing to share and model for us today. And thank you to the group for participating as well. As we wrap things up here, we wanted to take a second to share out our contact information one more time. We have on this on this slide here, you see our contact information. We're also going to drop the link for you to check out the additional kin-focused resources online on the Government Performance Lab website, like we mentioned before. And also today's slides and resources will once again be sent out by email following the call. We'll also be adding in those additional questions that you submitted into the chat yourself. So thank you all so much for sharing your expertise. And with that, I will pass things back to you, Marina.
Thank you so much. I'm actually going to pass it to Kylie to wrap us up. Thanks, Kylie.
Kylie.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kylie Craggett. I am one of the technical assistant specialists with the Grand Families and Kinship Support Network. So thank you for joining us today, and a special thank you to Marina and to all of our presenters for that wonderful information. As Melissa said at the beginning of today's meeting, we are skipping the July 4th meeting, so we will meet again on July 18th, which is going to be a really great panel discussion about kin mobilization success in Los Angeles. It's going to feature Kevin Campbell, Judge Nash, and then also Adrian Olson from the LA County DCFS. In the meantime, if we can assist you with any kin mobilization work or provide other support to you as you serve kin caregivers, please complete our request for assistance form, which we are putting in the chat. Would love to hear from you. Those requests will come directly to me. So I would love to be in contact with you. That is it for today. That link is in the chat, and I hope everyone has a wonderful afternoon.
Thanks for coming, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thanks all.